This November, Pamela Lee will be taking part in what some call the sailing version of the World Cup. The Route du Rhum is 6,500 kilometres long, and Pamela will be the first Irish person to compete in it as a skipper. It's the definition of multitasking. Pamela, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Tell us about this race, because it sounds terrifying.
Well, yes, as you said, the Route du Rhum, it's a very famous race in France. It's based on the old French historical maritime traditions of the old rum and coffee routes. So it goes from Saint-Malo in France over to Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. And as you said, it's once every 4 years. So it kind of falls into that category for offshore sailors as the World Cup or the Olympics, in our world. So it's quite a big deal even to just get to the starting line, let alone to get to the finishing line.
And is this a solo race or there's more than one person on?
Yeah, it is solo. So it's one sailor on their boat from start to finish.
Yeah. How long, generally speaking? Well, obviously, it's the quicker you go, the better you'll do. But how long does it take to...
Well, there's various classes of boats. The offshore sailing works a little bit. Sometimes I compare it to race car driving. So you have different classes of cars. So depending on the boat, it can be faster or slower. I'm in the class 40. So that's a 40-foot racing boat that I handle myself. And we're kind of the rally car of the fleet. So I'm kind of on that entry level. Hopefully I'll work up eventually to the bigger boats, but on that entry level. So a little bit slower than some of the other boats, but fast compared to normal standards. So we'd be looking at the fastest, I think, would be 15 days would be looking very good. Yeah. But more likely to be 18 to 20 days, depending on the weather. And of course, depending on if you have any damage, you're working with your boat, the mechanical machine. So there's that element of it as well.
Yeah. And how bumpy can it get weather-wise?
It can get extremely bumpy, particularly at the start, because we leave on the 1st of November from Saint-Malo, which is northern France. So essentially we're going through the North Atlantic in winter. And us here in Ireland, we know what that means. It means low pressures, bad weather coming through. So historically, there's quite a high chance that we'll get some pretty nasty weather, particularly at the very start. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get south. We're trying to get out of the North Atlantic, through the Bay of Biscay, which is also known as a particularly treacherous piece of water, and down south into the trade winds. Yeah. And that's when we get to kind of turn west, put up the spinnaker, which is our big fast sail, and kind of go as fast as we can across the Caribbean. And
when you're doing that, how much access will you have information in terms of what weather was waiting for you ahead?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Things have changed a lot in the sport. It's as I said, it's a mechanical sport. It's a sport that plays a lot with technology around a lot of areas. Particularly, one thing we work a lot with is solar energy and renewable energy, and performance-wise with foils, it kind of plays in the aerospace things. And the other side that's really evolved lately is the communication and the information side of it. And now that we have Starlink, we all have Starlink on board, which means we actually can be connected all the time to the internet, which means we can access, what we have the right to access is any free available weather data. We can't have anything that's been analysed by anyone else. We have to do all the analysis ourselves, but we can get any free available data, and we get that and use it. And so whatever's available out there we can use, but with weather forecasting, again, as we know in Ireland, it's not always completely correct. So we'll often say 3 days out, you have a fairly good picture. 5 days out, you're getting an idea. But more than that, it's really just an overview of what might be happening in the system. So we spend a lot of time looking at it, but you always have to be comparing with the reality around you as well, because it's just a weather prediction. Yeah. So about 3 days, we have a good idea. But interestingly, I work with meteorological specialists, especially leading up. And interestingly, it's become harder and harder actually to predict the weather. And the storms have become more frequent and more and stronger and harder to predict. And, again, it's a sport. We're playing with nature, we're playing with wind energy, and we're starting to see the effects of the change on our climate and how that's affecting the weather systems, which is very interesting.
But if you're in the race and you know that the quickest route is a straight line, so to speak. Pardon me, it's probably not, but I'm totally ignorant about it.
Never a straight line.
But just for the sake, just to make it for understandable for idiots like me, the quickest route is a straight line, but directly in that straight line is a massive storm. What do you do?
Well, this is a lot of what comes into our training. And sometimes it has happened to me a number of times where you're already out there in the ocean and there's a storm that develops and comes across the path. So, there's no get out. And we spend a lot of time working on preparing how to go into that in the best way possible, preparing yourself and your boat. You're minimizing sail. These are sturdy race boats. Normally, there's always things that go wrong, but it's part of the training. It's about figuring out how to control the controllables. So dealing with the factors on the boat and yourself to deal with that and get through that weather system as best as possible.
Yeah. And if something, God forbid, if something, disastrous happened, how much support is around you? Can you get help pretty quickly?
Well, it really depends on the location and what stage of the race you're at. I was actually involved in a rescue last year. One of my other races, we were just off the coast of France, and I went to the help of a competitor who'd crashed into a cargo ship and the boat had sunk. So in that case, we were the closest rescue, and that's something we often say in the middle of the Atlantic. If something does happen, your best chance of rescue is one of your competitors. So it's a really interesting human aspect to the sport as well, because although we're all competing against each other, we're all in it together as well. So there's a lot of camaraderie there, and that kind of expedition, adventure kind of allyship with it as well. So yeah.
And the craft you'll be piloting, is it designed for one person, or does it have to be kind of jury-rigged for one person to do everything?
Yeah, it's another great question. No, this boat that I'm racing, it is specifically designed around being able to be sailed by one or two people. That's kind of most of what I do, solo or double. So the kind of whole ergonomics of the vessel, so to speak, it's kind of like, as you say, a race car. The whole thing is completely empty, apart from all the necessary things. And we have, as much as possible, all the controls to the boat running back into the central cockpit. So it is possible for one person to manage as much as possible on their own. Of course, it was a little bit trickier, and you have to manage the boat differently than if you have more people on board. But it is built that way, yeah.
Have you been using the same boat for a long time?
So I've had this boat since May last year. So I've been racing it a year. I raced it in the championship last year. And my whole idea was to try and have a boat that I would know.
Yes,
it's like I think maybe horse riders or someone would compare to it. It's like your buddy, you need to know that boat, and every boat has idiosyncrasies and different ways to be sailed, and you need to spend time on it, knowing all the ins and outs, even from the electrics and the mechanical point of view. I've got to know how to manage the engine, to charge the batteries, to keep my autopilot going, and there's a lot of detail in it. So really, it was important to me to have at least a good season under my belt in the boat that I would be racing on the Route du Rhum.
Yeah, training yourself as well. Would part of that be you have to train yourself to go when you're racing, to go without sleep for long periods of time?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. There's the one side of just trying to be a good sailor, the skill in what that involves. And there's the other side that is very interesting, is learning how to manage yourself and know yourself, and kind of, we call it like the red zone. I think we have it. It's taught me a lot about how to deal with life as well. But trying to identify before you get really into that red zone, are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you cold? And catching it just before, even if it's just a little nap before you kind of hit the red zone, and figuring out the different things that work for you on board. And that comes from experience, although it's hard to recreate the situation of being in the middle of the Atlantic on your own. Yes. Of course. So it comes from bits of experiences, the shorter races that I've done, but also talking to other sailors and learning from the experience of others and those who've done it before you, and kind of trying to build that. But it's really a sport that the more you do it, the more you grow as well.
You must have to be incredibly fit, because I assume you're not just sitting in the craft, you're kind of racing all over the place doing stuff.
Yeah, and that's, again, it's another very interesting aspect of the sport, and a side to it that I really love. Actually, in offshore sailing, there's no male or female category. We all race together on the same teams and on the same race, so it's just for a sailor across the line. And people often ask me, is there a disadvantage as a female then because of the physical element of it? And I always say, well, I train to be as fit and as strong that I can be to make my life easier on the boat. But mostly I'm actually training, core and injury prevention for my balance, to be able to keep going when I'm tired, to have that core strength to try and avoid injury. Because if you're talking about a race that takes 20 days, it's not actually how quick you do a sail maneuver that's going to make the difference at the end. It's actually your tactics, where you place the boat. You don't make any mistakes. You don't break anything on the boat. So it's actually a really mental game. And it's more about understanding how to use your boat and your strategy. And I think that's why it's actually a very interesting sport to be a female in, because we have a lot of those skills. And, you know, there's a lot of research showing that women are really good at endurance sport, and we have a different way of reflecting on things sometimes. And you can really use those other elements besides the physicality of it. So of course the fitness is really important, but it's not the be all and end all. It's more about looking after yourself. That's not what's going to win you the race.
Yeah.